much for joining. This is our final, we're saying dessert course at the Pollinate Potluck. My name is Ariel. I'm the chief convener with Pollinate Impact. And over the last 2 weeks, we've had a ton of sessions. We've had incubators, accelerators, funders, ESOs, and all sorts of consultants and other folks who are working to support entrepreneurs across the regions that they're working in. And we are so happy to kind of wrap up this potluck, which has been our virtual launch with this session, no nonsense advice, incubator to incubator. So we have some amazing experience here that your peers are going to share with you. If you haven't joined any of our sessions yet, though, I feel like I see a lot of familiar faces, so apologies if some of this is redundant to you. But the reason why we started this network by launching this potluck is that we really wanted to create a safe space for you to share, engage, and also to help us understand what are some of the most important issues for you and for your work in impact incubation. So we've had a ton of insights. We've had a lot of fun sessions, and we're really excited for this one. So we want you to be engaged. We want you to ask questions. We want you to offer your experiences and your insights as well. So please don't hold back. And we want you to stay tuned for what's to come. So we are, this is the end of our launch series, but we are just getting started. So this was a lot of conversation, a lot of learning, a lot of sharing, and now we're going to really hit the road with a lot of activities that we'll share a little bit more about at the end of this session. So at Pollinate Impact, we always start every meeting with a group check-in question just to see where everyone's at and level set. And I really welcome our speakers and our panelists to also share and go ahead and answer the questions. So Mike, thank you. Tassin has just put the link to the Mentimeter poll here in the meeting chat. So just click on that link to respond to the check-in question. So what we're asking is, what is a personal strength of yours that you can offer to others on this call or other fellow network members, future network members, maybe we'll say. So it could be one word, it could be a short phrase, but just let us know what strength do you have that you think is genuinely annoying. Well, maybe annoying can be a good thing in some circumstances. Persistent listening, awesome. So can keep. I know that's kind of a deep thinking. Empathy, very nice. Let's see. Out of the box creative, I love that. And monetization. Okay, we've got some good ones. More listening. I love what's coming in here. Effective mentoring. Awesome. So yes, as we continue with future sessions and our calendar events, we look forward to all sharing more of those, not just today, but moving forward as well. So if you just move to the next poll question, we want to know where everybody is coming from. At Pollinate Impact, we are focused on Sub-Saharan Africa, South Asia, and Southeast Asia. Oh, a lot of Kenya's getting big. And Cambodia, awesome. I can see those are probably some of our speakers. Philippines, nice. Glad to see Southeast Asia really representing. Uganda, India, awesome. This is a really diverse crowd. We had one a couple of days ago, and it was only like East Africa, which was very interesting. So this is nice. Oh, Ireland. Hi, Ireland. That's nice. And Ghana. Awesome. So you can keep going through to the next question. And if you're an ESO, we want to know how long you've been in operation. This was actually a question that our panelists wanted to know as they're giving their very honest and frank advice. We wanted to know who's kind of in the room. Oh, 7 to 10 years has a lot. Great. So we have some really folks who have been around the block. So then, okay, wow, more than 10 years. So we have somebody from 11 to 15. So what this means is we have a ton of experience in the proverbial room here. So we'd love to hear from more of you. And we don't want to just limit this conversation to the folks that have agreed to be vulnerable here a little bit and share their experiences. So we really welcome your participation. Please feel free to drop your questions in the chat or raise your hand and ask any questions or share any experiences or advice that you want to share. We're all a group here and kind of in the same learning boat. So I think Shami, was that the last poll question? Or yes. Okay. Awesome. So without any further ado, I will let our wonderful speakers introduce themselves because I think they are far better equipped to do that than I am, and I don't want to read any boring bios. So we have Keisha Ghani joining us from Cambodia, I think, with She Investments. Also from Cambodia, we have Ian from Agile Development. We have joining from Zambia, we have Benedicta with oh my gosh, help me out here. Bongo Hive.
Kumasi Hive.
Kumasi Hive, wrong hive. Kumasi Hive, sorry. And we have Joram joining us from Sandbox in Kenya. And I'm gonna add him, but Joram, maybe you can turn your video on if you can. So maybe I'll let you guys just introduce each of yourselves in the order that I introduced you, and then we'll go from there. So Keisha.
Hi, everyone. It's evening here in Cambodia, so good evening to all of you. I'm Keisha, originally from Sri Lanka and currently working in Phnom Penh, Cambodia at She Investments. She stands for Support Her Enterprise. We're registered as a medium-sized company in Cambodia. We've been operating for about 8 years with an operating budget of between 500,000 to 750,000 US dollars a year. We typically work with about 1,000 women a year across around 15 to 20 different projects. And yeah, I think that's us in a nutshell. So I'll pass to Ian.
Ooh, I thought I was last. My goodness, you're breaking out of the box already. But if everyone's okay, I'll catch the Cambodia football. Yep. So my name's Ian. I've actually been working with early stage enterprises since 2009, starting in Australia. I'm from the middle of Australia, so if you don't understand a word I say, you're not alone. Just raise your hand if you need me to repeat something. So we've been operating in Cambodia for 13 years, but 12 as a registered social, well, there is no social enterprise legality here, but here working as an ESO for about 12 years. We primarily focus on working with entrepreneurs with disabilities and women entrepreneurs with disabilities in low resource and low literacy environments. I can also talk about our experience with our second ESO that works with impact ventures in the clean energy space as well. So that's running from ideation right through acceleration and capital readiness, which is a term we prefer rather than investment readiness, because really it's about getting ventures prepared and that they can make the choice for capital raising when they're ready. So yeah, as I'll provide the controversial ticket if you need it. I'm a middle-aged white guy. I've got nothing to lose.
Thanks, Ian. Benedicta, do you want to go next, and then Joram, and we'll come back. Well, we're saving the best for last, maybe with Ian's story. But so hold on to your hats for Ian's controversy.
All right. So thank you, everyone, and it's great to have everybody on the call. I'm Benedicta, and I'm the deputy manager at Kumasi Hive in Ghana. So basically, we are a tech hub that is into the rapid prototyping of ideas. We support startups. We run acceleration and incubation programs, and then we work on projects as well. So basically, this is what Kumasi Hive is about. Thank you.
And Joram, do you want to go ahead? And so sorry, Benedicta, I really messed up your introduction, but thank you for correcting me. Yeah, Joram, go ahead.
Okay, Joram Winamo, I'm the CEO of Sandbox based out of Nairobi in Kenya. If I keep switching off my video, it's just because I want the network to be stable until we figure out stable internet everywhere. But yes, we are a one-stop shop for supporting entrepreneurs. I've been at this since 2007. Switched brands somewhere in between where we opened up another company that could give a more holistic solution called Sandbox. But before that, I was running Wild International, that's a strategy consulting for entrepreneurs. And then we opened up a hub that aggregates 37 professional services today to support people in Nairobi. Yeah, you'll be learning more about that as I tell my story. And hopefully I can muster up half the controversy that Ian will bring to the table.
No doubt, no doubt. I can't wait for you guys to get into it. So, so just what we're going to do next for the kind of the flow of this session is each of our speakers are going to have about 5 minutes or so to share a story that they wanted to share. And when we were talking about this, funnily enough, all of the stories really came into some related to scaling somehow, scaling up, scaling down, scaling to suit your needs. So I don't want to provide too much of a spoiler alert, but we'll have each of these folks share their story and give some recommended pieces of advice. If you have questions while they're talking, please feel free, to include them in the chat. Otherwise, we do have quite a bit of time for Q&A at the end. So we'll go one at a time, and we'll hand it over to Keisha to get us started, and then I'm gonna get out of this pin situation. Over to you, Keisha.
I can see myself super large on the screen. This is not intimidating at all. And if the others, I guess if I'm first, I'm meant to be the least controversial, or at least I'm setting the bar for where controversy starts. So maybe I'll keep things interesting or a little bit lighter. But yeah, like I said, She Investments, we're basically a social enterprise, similar to a lot of the other ESOs on this call. We focus predominantly on women, but we were the first culturally tailored and program using a gender lens related to incubation and acceleration in Cambodia. We have predominantly worked with women, but we do also work with men across some of the different programs that we have. Primarily, we were working in Phnom Penh, and then we expanded our operations to 4 other provinces of Cambodia. And this year we've worked in 10 provinces. And unfortunately, I have just forgotten how many provinces there are in total in Cambodia. So Ian, if you can help me out at some point. Yeah, but from 2015, it started as a really small team with 3 co-founders and just 1 other staff member related to admin, HR, and finance. And then rapidly started to scale in 2018 and 2019, adding on programs in addition to our incubator, which is typically a 6-month program with 2 workshops every month, to then have an accelerator to focus on digital literacy, to have financial literacy as its own program, to conduct monthly membership activities as our network of women entrepreneurs grew. And so as it stands, we have about 600 women entrepreneurs that we had worked with consistently over the last 3 years. And like I said earlier, this year we've worked with up to 1,000 women across different programs. But of course, this is where the controversy starts, because is it about quality or is it about quantity? And so we set our strategic goals about a year ago, and we said we no longer wanted to focus on working with thousands of women. We would rather work with 250 to 300 women this year. And in the end, what happened was we tried to develop programs where we would focus on 3 to 6 month periods of support. But as an ESO, we have to keep the lights on. And so we did eventually have to take on projects where it was much more focused on numbers as opposed to like quality of the services delivered. So things like 1-day programs on digital literacy, which do have an impact for women entrepreneurs that have maybe never experienced programs like that before, but we much prefer high-touch, long-term support programs. Regarding scale and our story of scale, we went from a team of 5 in 2015-16 to then in 2021 having a team of almost 40 staff as we expanded to different provinces. We had, I think, 10 different facilitators that were working in each of those areas, and very soon started to realize that as a project-based business, it is impossible to retain that many staff on a consistent basis. And so what we did was we switched over to a contractor model where we saw the issues that we had with having full-time staff in different provinces also having to do their own admin, do their own finance, operate their own office. And instead we decided, let's make them contractors that we work with on a daily rate. We'll get them together every couple of months, train them up on any curriculum changes. And then based on that, we don't have to have them full-time as staff doing all the overhead as well. And so we've now scaled down to a team of 15 And this seems to be a lot more manageable for us. We get different types of funding for our different programs. During the last couple of years, we've also had to work more with projects that are funded, subcontracted through USAID or the EU. And if any other ESOs have experienced this, they're great because you get to run multi-year projects that give you a little bit more financial sustainability, but you also need like 3 or 4 admin staff that can help you do all the financial reporting that is required for this, which then takes up a ton of your team capacity. And for places like us, where we're doing training and mentoring, and staffing costs are the bulk of your needs as an operation. When funders turn around and say, well, we don't want to fund staff, can we bump up the event costs? Can we bump up the activity costs? But really your workforce is your people. Let's see, what else had I written down here? In our experience, a lot of the funding that we've received has been just on the basis of how do we have good quality programs? How are we seen? How are we heard in different aspects? We often end up much more successful on bids where partners have approached us because they've said, there's a specific project that we heard about that you've worked on. We'd like to design, like co-design something together. We've been much more unsuccessful if we try to apply through a competitive bid process. Also because I think, as some of us know, some of those are often written in a way that is geared towards a specific partner already, in which case it may have made more sense for them to just have those kinds of conversations with different partners and co-design instead of doing it as an application. And then what else? I think to summarize where we're at with our current scale, we have a pretty strong team that's able to deliver on multiple projects, as opposed to having staff that only focused on one project at a time. We now have a much stronger team where each individual project manager can focus on 2 to 3 projects, and facilitators are delivering on multiple different types of projects. And we don't have so many in-house, which require more human resource capacity. But at the same time, there are drawbacks to this because it can result in less depth of expertise. There might be issues with identifying facilitators that have the right sector experience, but also the ability to pilot new projects, which I think we were doing a lot more in the 2019 time period versus now, when we don't have as much capacity to pilot new things, partly because we have less team members that have the time to do that and are stretched more thin, but also because it just depends on what funding opportunities are available. So I think that's an overview of our story, our scale. If there are any questions, I'm happy to take them later. So thank you. I'll hand over to who's next.
Joram is next, but Keisha, if you want to just give any quick pieces of advice from that experience, that, you know, kind of concrete recommendations for given your story, and then maybe we'll hand it over to Joram.
Okay, specific advice, I would say some of the things that we struggle to do as an ESO, and I think the hardest for us was probably the team has always been very close. It's very much a startup culture that then, you know, formalized a little bit more as a business. And the struggle was all team members always feel necessary. We had a great working culture, a great team. And so then when you have to make really hard decisions about how to continue delivering your programs for as long as possible, to be able to meet your deliverables really well, you have to make tough decisions about which team members you really want to invest time into, which team members have the capacity to grow into different roles. Do you want more qualified project managers as opposed to a bunch of entry-level program officers and junior facilitators? So I think making those decisions, we took longer to do them than we should have. And those are things that we've had to reflect on a lot. But I think, yeah, trying to be persistent in focusing on quality over quantity, as valuable as it is to secure the funding that you need for your programs, I think trying to put more emphasis and highlight where you're making impact in terms of like a much higher mission-driven level, I think that's the advice I would give, is focus on that.
Fantastic. Yeah. Joram, over to you. Jerome, can you hear me?
I can go. Yes, here I am.
Go for it.
I had promised to do a presentation. I think if I'm visual, it will help a little bit more because Sandbox is. We try to get people to really understand our model because that's helpful. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I mentioned we are a for-profit, though we do have a non-profit alongside the for-profit now. So our model was to aggregate different professional service providers, like a whole army, an entire ton of people who are specialized, hyper-specialized in specific things like accounting, legal, HR, governance, marketing, startup coach, the list is now at about 37 non-competing professional services that we put together. And so we aggregate them under one roof and try to coordinate them and get them working together at the Sandbox. We also have a physical space that has like meeting rooms, coaching rooms, training rooms. These professionals pay to be located at the Sandbox, and so they are one of our sustainability stream. And then we carry out projects, large companies, contractors, and we work through them and with them to deliver on the projects. And so Sandbox is about 3.5 years old now. But I've been running a consulting firm since 2007 in the same space doing strategy. And then we brought along the other 36 companies alongside the strategy company to complement each other. And so to the best of our knowledge, we've not seen this model anywhere else unless you guys are doing it and you haven't told me. And so if you're interested in collaborating around this, we'd be very happy to do so. All the experts are entrepreneurs first. They've run a business for at least 5 years. So there's a high level of entrepreneurial empathy, and we do a lot of collaboration just to help the businesses, grow and scale. And so, we co-create a lot of solutions amongst the what we call experts that I just showed you, and just help come up with solutions. Key problem we're addressing is that currently entrepreneurs just struggle to get good quality, affordable, relevant, and convenient professional services. And so by aggregating high quality professional services and helping them do product development and pricing that works for small, medium-sized enterprises, it makes it easier for them to walk into one location and get all the services they need. On a larger scale, we are looking to scale the model and interconnect the experts across cities in Africa and eventually the rest of the world. And so, that's part of it. I'd mentioned in terms of structure, so we have the for-profit, but we also have a foundation that runs alongside the non-profit. Honestly, that is just largely to optimize for taxes when it comes to grant projects. It's very complicated when we try and do it through the for-profit. Our tax regime is very unforgiving to any money that comes into your account that looks like it's from a client, but it's a lot easier doing it through a non-profit. And so, that has its challenges in terms of trying to balance the for-profit, non-profit accounting so that they don't mix and seem to be a conflict of interest, both for the funders and the tax regime. And so, there's a lot that we do to try and balance out the model. And the other entities in terms of subsidiaries complement what it is that we are doing for the entrepreneurs. Lots of experiments. Very quickly, we have 4 large buckets of revenue streams, and this is something I'll talk about when it comes to tips. So we have revenues that come from the experts in terms of what they pay, license fees, commissions, and in future, we are looking at royalties and the like. The physical space has some revenues that come in through the meeting rooms and hot desks and stuff permanently for the experts, but we occasionally have our entrepreneurs also hire the rooms for their own stuff. And then we have the entrepreneurs who we're trying to engage through programs, events, and we charge them for that as well. And then there's large institutions that we work with that sponsor programs or fund innovation challenges and different things that we do with them. So we have these 4 large buckets. I would say majority are around the expert-based revenues and the institutions, almost 50-50. The others kind of complement that. Yeah, we're looking to scale aggressively, and we've gotten requests from all over. So everyone else might be telling you about scaling down. We are going in the opposite direction because yeah, the problem is big, and we think we have a model that is workable. And so we are looking at yeah, just plugging that solution in different parts of where we are in Kenya, East Africa, and around the world as well. Yeah, so I can get down to the tips that, you know, for incubators. One, we tell startups and entrepreneurs to solve problems that people are willing to pay for. Let's also do the same as incubators. Let's actually look for very specific problems that our entrepreneurs are having in the process of building and scaling their businesses, and create high quality solutions that when they pay for the services, they feel that they're getting value for money. At the beginning of our cohort-based programs, we used to compete with a lot of subsidized or free programs, and people would be like, why do you charge? We realized that commitment levels went a lot higher when we charged the entrepreneurs. Even in subsidized programs, when they pay something, their commitment is a lot higher, both to attending and implementing the things that they are learning. And yeah, they also get a lot more candid feedback about the quality of your service when people are paying for it. And so that has been really helpful to us, because they've really pushed us to yeah, to like really up our game in the different things that we do. Second thing I would say is incubators need multiple revenue streams if you're to be sustainable. And that's because each revenue stream is like really either spotty, you know, projects starting and ending, or really thin. And so we have just seen in our experience, the 4 buckets that I showed you that are even broken down to further revenue streams, the more spread out the revenue streams are, the more stable the entire system is. Because if you have 1 large or 2 projects at any given time, and then they run out, and you have to kind of ramp up again, or struggle to fundraise, or get into those really anxious moments of what's going to happen from next year. But we've realized that when you have a lot of different revenue streams that are running alongside each other, then the anxiety levels, you know, tend to be a lot less, and it's a lot easier to also fix gaps along the way as you go along. Also, it's helpful when your revenue streams solve lasting problems, not short-term fads, because in particularly the entrepreneurship in the development world, you know, right now it's climate change and gender. Later on, you know, it will be something else. And, you know, if you, I think, peg your entire existence on a short-term fad, and it runs out in the next 5 years, you could be left struggling to figure out how to survive. Some people are very good at, you know, making themselves look like the latest thing. We've struggled with that because we try and solve fundamental problems. And so it's usually difficult for us to look like what the funders want us to look like if we're being true to ourselves. Then the other thing is that the entrepreneurship ecosystem is made up of more than entrepreneurs. A lot of people just focus on the entrepreneur and the startup alone, and then figure that maybe they don't have enough money to keep them going, or they need to do really huge volumes. But we've incorporated their suppliers, service providers, investors, financiers, funders, government, academia, and tried to build a value proposition for each of these audiences. And that helps also just diversify the revenue streams significantly. And so you can create value for some or all of them simultaneously and diversify your revenue streams. And then again, that helps to just, yeah, lighten the load. And then finally, don't kill yourself doing stuff that doesn't pay off. If it's not sustainable, just do stuff that works for you. Yeah, we were joking earlier when we had gotten into this call. I was telling the other guys that they look so happy, and I hardly come across happy ESO leaders because it's always you're always, in the grind and really struggling just to get things working. I've seen a lot of people that burn out, mental health issues, and all this can, take a significant toll. And so I say, put all the effort possible to make sure that you have a model that's working better and sustainable, but make sure that it's also working for you and that you're not giving all of yourself to help other entrepreneurs survive, scale, and succeed, but you yourself as the enterprise support organization are not having your bills met and, things working out for yourself. So that's what I would say for now. Thank you. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Joram. Maybe I'll ask one question before we go to the next one. Although I do see a question in the chat is, I think Keisha started off with, this tension of quality versus quantity, and she said they're really looking at quality. And Joram, you seem to be, you're going to take over the world. Do you see that as a tension for you? And if so, how are you considering that massive amount of scale while still delivering high quality support?
Yeah, it's a good question. From where I sit, if you look at a business in its entirety, a business creates value and then creates systems and processes around how to scale that value, and usually also have quality systems. As far as Sandbox is concerned, our first quality determinant is the quality of expert that you recruit onto the Sandbox. And over the last 3.5 years, we have really come up with a rigorous process of doing that recruitment. And that's the same process that we are now using in other jurisdictions to recruit similar quality experts and then plug, support systems and processes to what they are already doing, just to kind of standardize, harmonize the quality that they'll deliver. The second thing is, if I continue to load the costs of my team on just one Sandbox, it's actually more difficult to sustain than if I spread that cost out across several profitable Sandboxes. So for me, scale is actually a survival strategy, just based on how we have structured the business and the fact that we are on track to be profitable with the first Sandbox. And so we can foresee how, when we have 3, 4, 5 locations running, it actually makes us more sustainable than when we are just running one unit. And the other thing is, when we are coaching our entrepreneurs, we usually tell them, if a problem is in one location and exists in a similar format in another location, that's what kind of provides validation for scale. And we've not seen this model anywhere else. And so we are looking at different models, whether franchise, licensing, plugging into existing government programs or academic programs. So we'll not be scaling physical locations, we'll be plugging into existing ones. So we found a low-cost model of doing that scaling. We started a virtual Sandbox, find the experts, put them in a network, have them pay the subscription fee and get the benefit of being part of a network, and then work towards the physical space later on. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Joram. And I see you've struck a chord here with Hadija in Uganda, and Henning, I see your comment about the tension between funders and focus strategies. So I think we'll come back to that in the Q&A, because I think that's a really kind of very key tension here. And I think we'll probably hear more about that also from Benedicta and Ian. So maybe we'll come back to that in a little bit. But yeah, I think that's right on the head. So great. So thank you so much, Joram. We'll move on next to Benedicta to share your story and give your recommended advice.
Okay. All right. So please, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I'm Benedicta, and I would want to share a little light about what Kumasi Hive has done over the years. So basically telling our story and then what we've learned from the entire process. So Kumasi Hive started as a small group known as Creative creativity group. So a group of students, about 4 students coming together to start building things around basic electronics things. They were university students, so things that they saw in their textbooks that needed to be practicalized. So I see something, how do I make this thing feasible? How do I make people understand this particular process? So this student started creativity group, and along the line, someone saw some value in what they were doing, and then that was how creativity group transitioned into Kumasi Hive. So it started in 2016, and by 2017, the company was registered fully as Kumasi Hive. Though we transitioned to Kumasi Hive, we still had creativity group as a campus group. So you go to most of these universities, and then we have creativity group, more like a builders community for young people who are in the universities. So basically, we're looking at just identifying problems and then building solutions to those problems. And then out of the love and passion for it, it grew into what we currently have as Kumasi Hive. One thing that I've come to understand is that growth is inevitable. And once you are giving or providing some level of value to people, they also push back that same value to you. So over the years, we've had people coming on board. So we started with Solar Taxi. Solar Taxi started as an idea, and someone believed in the dream. So MasterCard Foundation believed in the dream, and that is where partnership started. So someone sees that you are doing this particular thing, it is solving an SDG goal, it is creating some level of employment, and at the same time, you are reducing the waste that we see in the environment. So how do we push this particular agenda? And that is how Solar Taxi came about. We've had startups or companies that have gone through Kumasi Hive over the years, and it has become necessary to always put value on whatever service or whatever solution that you are giving out to people. And it is through the same value that we had projects that focused more on gender inclusiveness. So we had a project like the Bridge the Gap initiative, basically bridging the gender divide gap between the men within the tech ecosystem as compared to the women. So when it comes to our part of the world, especially Ghana, most ladies or most women shy away from this tech-related subjects. So how do you build the interest? How do you encourage them to take up the challenge? And that was where Bridge the Gap initiative started. So we had a number of young ladies showing interest in the program, but along the line, some also had to fall out. And let me tell you this, and let me tell you why that happened. So we had married people who had to join the program. And in our part of the world, if you are married, you have a lot of responsibilities, especially if you're a woman. So you are taking care of your husband. If you have kids, you're taking care of the kids. If you have other responsibilities aside that, now you're supposed to take care of yourself, and then family duties. So a training program that is supposed to close at 5, we have most of the ladies closing, let's say, okay, I'm supposed to leave and go and pick my child from school. So instead of 5, I want to close at 2. Someone says, oh, my husband says he wants to see me home very early today. So unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to stay longer for the training program. So how do we ensure that these people see the need to be a part of this training program? And then we had to start having an in-house training. So there is the need for us to psych the minds of these young ladies and these young people that, look, in the next 1 year, your value is supposed to increase. Other than that, nobody wants to work with you. And it is about time you begin to make personal decisions for yourself as a young person, being it male, being it female. So we started having in-house trainings. So instead of going home and coming to our training facility, you are kept in-house, food is provided, and that was some level of incentive, because people wouldn't understand why they are supposed to leave their day-to-day jobs and then just join into your training program. So something is supposed to give. If it's not monetary support, then it's supposed to be food. If it's not food, then the person is supposed to feel comfortable, and then they need to join your training program. Then in 2020, COVID happened, and that was something that actually shook us, especially knowing that we're dependent solely on grants and then on development funds from development organizations. So COVID happened, and there were a number of grants that were expected to run a couple of projects, but because of COVID, those grants were diverted to focus more on COVID-related projects. Then we had to come back and then re-strategize. How do we leverage on this particular problem to also solve the solution of the problem? So we have a makerspace, and then as part of our strategies to ensure that we still get access to some of these funding opportunities to run our training programs and then to run general operations, we decided to start building the face shields. So our part of the world, we're advised to wear nose mask, face shields, the need for us to check our temperature, so the thermometer guns and all that. So our makerspace had to put in a proper structure to understand how the COVID is impacting societies, because you realize that there are people in even remote places that couldn't afford some of these basic necessities like hand sanitizers, like nose mask, thermometer guns. So we had to send in a proposal again to request for some level of funds to be able to build these things and then donate or give out to these deprived communities in the area. So we built a couple of them. We built face masks, we built thermometer guns, we made some hand sanitizers, among other things, and then we donated to a hospital, one of the big hospitals in our region. And then partnerships developed. So now the hospital would want to work with you. So we saw the need for us to identify a particular problem, and then based on that problem, we devised a solution. Based on that solution, a partnership was developed, and that partnership has been so beautiful over the years because it has transitioned our operations from just trainings to more of research, where we have people trooping into our makerspace to develop prototypes to understand how things work, and also transition into our biolab, where a lot of research work is being done in the areas of the sciences. However, one thing that we noticed is that irrespective of where you find yourself as an incubator, you always need to have a contingency plan. Other than that, you would always find yourself in deep waters. We didn't have a contingency plan because we felt we didn't anticipate COVID at all. So what kind of contingency plan do you have as an incubator that in the next 3 months, the next 4 months, if things do not go as you are expecting, how would you be able to adjust? Would you say, okay, because things are not going as expected, let me close down operations, or let me just find another thing doing? There is always the need for you to have a contingency plan. Aside that, there is also the need for us to always provide value. People are looking out for value. I've always maintained the fact that people don't buy what you build, they buy the reason for you building. So you can build whatever you want to build, but what is the reason? Why are you doing this particular thing? Is that what people are looking for? So there is always the need for us to put some level of value on whatever that we do. When Joram was saying, he mentioned that we always tell startups to do A, B, C, and D. What about us? Are we towing that same line? Are we telling startups to do A, B, C, and D, and then we are doing E, F, G, H? It is always important that we take the lead and then these startups would follow. Have a niche for yourself as an incubator. What do people identify your incubator for? Are you doing almost everything? Are you an incubator that is identified to be a gender-based related incubator? Are you more into research? Are you more into the sciences? What is that niche that you've carved for yourself as an incubator? And that is something that we've always leveraged on at Kumasi Hive, especially with our makerspace course. That is where it all started from. A group of young people who were creative, who were building things that they had seen in their textbooks, and then they felt it is about time for us to put some level of value and then get identified with this kind of value that we are giving to people. So over the years, we've learned, we've unlearned, we've relearned, we've adjusted. We've come to understand that it is important to always have a contingency plan. And last, I would want to say that it is important to build networks. Most of the funding opportunities that we've had has been based on recommendations and the networks. So you go for this program, you go for this session, and then someone says, oh, there is this particular opportunity out there, and I think your organization will be the best fit. How does that happen? It's because you've built some rapport and some level of network relationship with people. Don't think right after a project, that is it. After the project, what happens? Have you been able to reach out to the organization to find out how things are even going at their side? Whether they've been able to recoup, like, what exactly have you been able to do after a particular project as an incubator? Is it that, okay, that is it? Let me move on to the next. It is important for us to build relationships, mutually beneficial relationships that can connect us to opportunities, that can connect us onto the next big project, that can connect us onto the next big incubator. And that is what Kumasi Hyde is leveraging on, basically. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Benedicta. Thank you so much for that. I see a great kind of side chat happening here around saying no to money, but I think before we come into that, Ian, we'd love to hear from you. And yeah, well, I've just got my eye on the clock, so if we can keep it to around 5 minutes or so, then we'll have a few minutes for questions at the end.
Oh, thanks, Ariel. Well, let's see if we can do it in 3. I'll answer some of the questions in my intro if you want. We can streamline this. So yeah, just a quick rehash: agile development, women entrepreneurs with disabilities, and also youth and men occasionally. In Cambodia, we are the idiots of the entrepreneur support organization world. And I'm going to tell you why to answer some questions. And I love the fact that Benedicta talked about carving a niche for yourself, because we are so niche that when inclusion came out, the OG hashtag inclusion was about disability. And then, no offense to She Investments, gender came along, and hashtag gender, hashtag inclusion. And now DEI has come along. So whilst the global north or the global minority now talks about diversity, equity, and inclusion, disability literally slips off the end of the table. So I operate in a space that doesn't pay off, but we believe that in enabling environments for people and entrepreneurs with disabilities, then it basically creates an accessible environment for all. There's a number of reasons why we do this. We've been working with people with disabilities for a long time in Cambodia, and we noticed that most of the women were creating informal businesses because of lack of support, stigmatization, and various other factors. So in Cambodia, male entrepreneurs generally are ahead, then women entrepreneurs, and then women with disabilities. So we are not a short-term fad. We're not even a long-term fad. In fact, we're no fad. So we have a service that people aren't willing to pay for unless we guilt them into it. And that's how we got our first funding. So 5 years ago, we're majority Khmer women-led. My first employee, Kim, who's now our general manager, we said, okay, we've been doing all this support work for disabilities. What if we do something crazy? And we talked to people with disabilities in the community, and we said, what if we actually did entrepreneurship for people with disabilities? No one's funding it. We just stepped off the cliff and built the parachute on the way down. And the first funding we got was from USAID funded PACT. And it was a very small amount. We had an ARC that I'll talk about later. But the thing that we said to them on their project launch, as we're building networks, if 15% of the women in Cambodia are living with a disability, why are you hosting this in an inaccessible hotel? And that started the relationship. They had a weak spot. You can't talk about hashtag all women without being inclusive. So that was the first funding. Thankfully, the Australian government at the same time were then moving in towards disability and gender-based violence. We picked up our second contract. So our ARC to work with people in low literacy, low resource communities was to start with basic ICT and cybersecurity and using Facebook so you could control your identity. We moved into incubators. That was funded by the Australian government. We then did digital skills literacy as a pivot. During COVID, it was funded by DAI. We then came back to PACT, USAID funded, to then deliver more incubators, more digital literacy, and the Australian government came back through their access program and allowed us to run another incubator. And our capstone project was working with the 500 women we trained, or I think about 450, to create a peer-led sustainable support network, which means we then train them in running meetings and leveraging things like savings groups, which are quite common here, and using the interest on savings groups loans to then pay for the administration costs of a peer-led women entrepreneurs with disabilities network. So we hustled our way over 5 years to look at sustainability in this. And as John quite well said, then the money stops. So in that regard, we and also to echo what Keisha was saying, we've never really applied for work, because the quality of our work is what brings people to us. And we never do anything really outside of our mission drift. Now, the reason we do that is twofold. Everything we get paid to do contributes to our knowledge base. We never go beyond probably 10 to 12 staff, and our revenue streams never go beyond probably 250 to 300,000 a year. So we don't carry a lot of staff. We spend a lot of time interlinking staff, which is a great lesson that Keisha said before as well. And the reason for that is this year, our general manager is on maternity leave, and our program manager, best worst case for us, is now studying a master's overseas. But we haven't had to hire anyone in the last 3 months, because the first thing we said to our team was, do you want to step up? Do you want to cover it? Do we need someone? And they make the decisions. So the short version is, yeah, we have multiple revenue streams, but we don't grab everything because it doesn't contribute to what we do. And it doesn't contribute to our relationships or our networks. So we're very focused on what we do, what we achieve, because the end goal is it all has to contribute to the mission of enabling environments for entrepreneurs with disabilities or disability-related ventures. So there you go. How's that?
Perfect. Thank you so much,
6
Ian.
minutes, I think. Whoops.
No, that's absolutely fantastic. So I mean, Joram has sort of added his response to that in the chat, but Keisha and Benedicta, do you just want to comment quickly on this, tension between how do you ensure, how do you ensure you can stick to your mission like Ian's doing without sort of having that mission drift when funders are setting some expectations that could nudge you in a different direction?
Okay, so the reality is sometimes we do have these challenges, but we've come to understand that it's not everything that you're supposed to pick up and do. There are people within the ecosystem that actually align with those particular goals and missions that some funders are looking out for. So there are times that we've pushed opportunities to other incubators because what the funders are looking for actually aligns with their scope of work. It doesn't necessarily mean that when opportunities come and they do not even align with what you do, you still go ahead and do them. So let's learn to share opportunities. If they come and they do not really align with what you are doing, and you feel there is another incubator that falls within that description or that vision, you just share with them. Yeah.
I'll add to that. I mean, for us, I think every project we've worked on, we've always focused on, is it advancing outcomes for women entrepreneurs, either in terms of their confidence, their skill set, and where we see the biggest outcome in any of the programs that we have is women feel more confident making financial decisions for their business and for their household, and women feel more confident to be part of networks. That's where we see huge differences. Of course, they increase their revenue, which is great, but in the context of Cambodia that Ian was mentioning, where sociocultural norms play a big part in growth and development, if we talk about scaling businesses and capacity, I think this is where we're able to make the biggest impact. But where we have made mistakes that I think Ian has and his team at Agile have been more careful with is maintaining a solid team instead of chasing growth. And I think this is a point that we've done it. We've made this mistake. We're seeing other people make the same mistake now and tell us, oh my goodness, I wish we had learned that from you. Is trying to take on a bigger team, trying to do it without getting the model fully right, or being in a ecosystem where there are many different players, many different actors, and less funding opportunities, and like they said, fads. I think it's hard to anticipate how some of that will work. we were actually quite lucky during COVID. We have tons of programs to run because everyone wanted to fund programs during COVID. It's now that COVID is over that actually there are less programs that people want to fund. So I think, yeah, this is quite interesting.
Thanks for that, Keisha. And I know we're running short on time, but I think, one thing that I just want to bring out is, I don't want to say we've heard contradicting things because there's a lot of things that aligned, but it sort of seems that there's, maybe there's no one fit. Jorm's saying, stay away from fads. Ian's saying, we don't want to have anything to do with fads. Keisha, you're really focused on gender. I think maybe can you just kind of speak to that? How do you figure out what it is that works for you? Because maybe what's working for Joram is not going to work for Keisha. So, I mean, whoever kind of wants to react to that, feel free.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, when we first started training early stage entrepreneurs, we use a lot of analogies, and it's akin to sailing a ship and knowing that there's change over the horizon, and you're effectively charting a path with the stars. Or the great thing about the movie Moana is you got to put your hand in the water and check for the warm currents. And this echoes Benedicta's strategy, you got to constantly build your networks. Funders are like talking to a goldfish in a goldfish bowl. And it's difficult because the lead time could be 9 months in seeding this, so that you're effectively letting them know and signaling, hey, when you go for the next round from your funders, what about disability, right? So you've got to keep building those networks. Sometimes I'm terrible at it. And then sometimes things that we've seeded 3 years ago either come back to us in funding or the government makes a change, which we also count as a significant win. So I think it's about knowing what change you're looking to create, whether you have an internal theory of change or it's explicit in your organization, and just being able to say, okay, the ambiguity you can deal with. Sometimes, to use another sailing analogy, you have to tack and catch outwards and catch the wind back in. It's not linear. ESOs are not linear. Entrepreneurship is not linear. And just to cap this and to echo Benedicta, if you talk to 5 mentors, they might tell you A, B, C, D, but really what you need to do is FGH. And it's about understanding what you need at the right time and leveraging that. Because only entrepreneurs or ESO founders are going to really truly understand what their needs are, whether it's Jonathan taking this incredible, Joram, my goodness, Joram taking this incredible data and leveraging it and scaling it, or us keeping things really tight and just pulling punches when we need to. So yeah, to echo Benedicta, create a niche, or as we said the other day, understand your own flavor. It's weird, but it's the value proposition that counts.
Yeah, I can also weigh in on that. I think something maybe that's usually ignored is that the journey of entrepreneurship is usually a journey of self-discovery as well. Sometimes what you are passionate about doing has no money. Sometimes what you don't like doing, you can do, and you're very good at, and people keep coming to you, asking you to do it and throwing money at you. And then there's everything in between. And you kind of have to figure out your philosophy, your values, what you're comfortable doing, what you want to keep doing. Sometimes what you're doing takes off 5-10 years later. And so you kind of have to I think balance out all the different needs versus offers and your philosophy versus values, and somehow get a sweet spot somewhere in between. For me, this is my 17th year in the ESO space, and this is what I have, and maybe in 10 years it will be something different. And I kind of try and give people the freedom to go through that journey and make good decisions.
I just wanted to add as well, I think Ian and I have seen each other on a couple of these panels now, and I think one of the things that we've become really aware of, this idea that our existence also sets the tone for what else is happening in the funding space. Us existing as ESOs, it definitely highlights where some of those issue points are, reminds people that those issues exist. And in a lot of cases, people forget that they haven't been solved yet. They're not problems that just exist in a vacuum. You've found a solution and then it just continues. And so for us, we also really see ourselves as we're an intermediary for underserved groups of women that don't have access to services that they require, that don't have the confidence they need. They have ideas, they want to achieve things, but at the same time, if we think of the relationship that we have with the funding space, it's also a matter of funders listening to us, listening to entrepreneurs to help pursue the need that they see in the world to solve. But if they don't have the skills, the capacity, the confidence to do that, and they need us to help them, which is where we found our need for existence, then funders should listen to that. And so how do we make that as productive a conversation as possible? And I think that's really where we stand.
Fantastic. Benedicta, any final comments or thoughts on that before we wrap?
Yeah, so I agree with Ian, Joram, and then Keisha. And I would just want to add this up. I think as incubators, it is also important for us to know how to negotiate our way with funders. I remember there was a time a funder reached out to us and was looking at us running an incubation program for 6 months. Obviously, that doesn't work, because looking at the kind of startups they were looking at and a 6 weeks incubation program, it wasn't going to do us any good. But we were able to negotiate our way through to, I think, 3 months, and then they agreed to it. So I think once we are able to have that level of conversations and understanding on both sides, we'll be able to take out some of these challenges that we face as incubators. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much. I think just so many insights here, and I think there's no silver bullet. I think everyone has their own space, they have their own focus areas, and it's figuring out what works for you and what can make that not only impact but the sustainability work for you. So before we wrap up, I know we are a bit over time, but I would like to ask everyone to turn your videos on. I'm going to get rid of all these spotlights. And if you have been to any of our other potluck sessions, you know what's coming next. So if I see a lot, Jerome keeps starting his video because of bandwidth. June, Claudia, Denise, Nicholas, Edwin, Duncan, May, Joshabed, I saw you there. So what we're going to do is take a quick, fun group photo. So we call it a surprise photo. So everybody's going to cover their hand with their eyes. And then I'm going to count backwards from 3. So when we get down to 0, you're going to open your hand and you're going to make a really silly surprise face. Okay? Make sense? All right, so everybody cover your face. And now you can't, it's too late. You can't turn your video off, so you're stuck with me. All right, so I'm going to count backwards from 3, 2, 1, and surprise. Awesome. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're a little bit over time, but if anyone still has questions, you're welcome to stick around. And if our speakers have a few more minutes, I'm sure they're happy to stick around and answer any more questions. Or if anyone wants to share an experience that resonated with them, please feel free to do so. I will. We have one final sort of poll just to push out. As thank you so much, Shami. As I mentioned at the start, with this is the last session of our potluck SAD, but was really we're just getting started with a lot of our network activity. So we want to know how you all want to engage with us moving forward. These kind of no nonsense sessions are something that we want to continue to do along with sort of failure fests, because we think there's huge opportunity to learn from things that didn't quite go as well as we had planned. And we have a ton of other things that we're looking to roll out over the next couple of months. So just let us know what's of interest to you, so that when we get that ground running, we know that we are on the right track with supporting you in ways that are really meaningful and effective. So, and yes, thank you. Tassin has put our LinkedIn there. So please follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow our website. We'll be launching our calendar of events very soon, so that you can stay tuned as to what's coming up next. And then I will just ask Tassin to share a quick video on Pollinate Impact and where we've come from. Again, apologies if you've seen this already, but our last kind of chance to roll this out. And then if you have questions or want to share, please feel free to stick around, and happy to have, a quick conversation before we log off. So Tassin, over to you.
It is estimated 7,500 incubators and over 3,000 accelerators operate globally. Social impact incubators play a vital role in supporting and nurturing social enterprises. However, incubators struggle to gain visibility or the credibility needed to access consistent funding, and the incubation industry has yet to achieve recognition as a fully established industry.
We often face the same challenges related to things like strategic growth, team management, financial sustainability, etc.
Impact incubators lack a space in which they can promote a shared understanding of best practices in their work.
Two of the challenges that I think are really important for incubators to try to overcome are staffing and related to funding.
To understand the incubation industry better and to arrive at the best possible solution, we interviewed more than 50 social impact leaders from around the world, including entrepreneurs, incubators, accelerators, funders, investors, and researchers, and here's what they had to say.
By creating a network where knowledge sharing is open, where there's an openness to understand from each other's mistakes and successes.
And there's something so supportive about having this kind of community that can enable you to troubleshoot these issues, and that really helps you to focus more on this impact piece alongside the incubation that we're doing.
By bringing together the stakeholders in this network, we hope to create a larger picture of the whole and the part that each of them is playing in this.
And this is why impact leaders from across the globe came together to design a global network of impact incubators to build Pollinate Impact.
Pollinate Impact is a member-driven network of social impact incubators,
where we aim to create a thriving, resilient, and mutually supportive ecosystem for impact incubators across the global south.
We believe that by empowering, resourcing, and enabling these impact enablers,
we can collectively amplify our ability to solve the biggest problems facing the people and the planet.
Pollinate Impact is an avenue for impact incubators to connect, collaborate, and co-create a bigger impact.
In essence, we celebrate the pollination of impact.
This network has been co-designed by a group of social impact leaders, representing incubators, entrepreneurs, academia, foundations, and networks. One word that comes to mind when you think of Pollinate Impact:
Synergy, amplification,
Community,
Collaboration,
Openness.
Join us on this inspiring journey. Together, we will solve the challenges facing people and the planet.
Thank you so much, Tassin. And thanks again. Thank you, Keisha, Ian, Benedicta, Joram. Really, really appreciate you being open, sharing your insights, your advice, your stories with us. And yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free to share. I know.